Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Adam Mueller with the State Your Business podcast. Today, I have Carter Nelson, who I met, I want to say about 7 years ago.
I'd say so, yeah.
And we met because of cars, because of your interest in cars and some cars that I have. And that led us to connecting and just over the years, meeting up with each other, checking in on how each other's doing. Yeah. Went to your wedding.
Yeah.
It was a great wedding you had, and brought my wife and kiddo along. And yeah, we had a really good time. So for those of you that don't know who Carter is, Carter has a background that's really interesting. Wanted to get him on the show for you guys because in 7 years, this guy has accomplished more than a lot of adults that I know, and just incredibly proud of the dedication that he's shown, and obviously there's fruit for it. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your background and maybe lead up to what got you, to the point of when we met, touch a little bit on that background, and we can take it from there.
For sure. I grew up in Duluth, a few hours north of the Twin Cities here. And up until 2011, when the real estate crash was 2008, 2009, my dad is a self-employed plumbing contractor. So his phone quit ringing maybe a couple years later, 2011 or so. He had no work in Duluth. So we ended up moving out to the Bakken oil field in North Dakota on the western edge there. And all my friends were left in Duluth. He uprooted us and brought us to North Dakota in search of work. And I noticed a laundromat. This was a few weeks in, of course, this didn't happen right away, but as a few months came in, this was June of 2012 we moved there. I said 2011. So June of 2012 we moved to North Dakota, Watford City, Alexander area, if people are familiar with that area. Anyways, a few months into it, I did notice there's a laundromat in town, this little town called Alexander. It was a small town for decades, right? And then a ton of people, like overnight in 2012, in search of work, came to the Bakken oil field in North Dakota. And I noticed a laundromat in town. I drove past it with my four-wheeler all the time. I was 12 years old, right? So I didn't have my license or anything, but I drove my four-wheeler through town. And I noticed that there was a line of people out the door every night. It looked like something out of a movie. This little laundromat on this little town that was only going to support hundreds of people is now having to support thousands, right? So I thought, hey, maybe there's an idea there to do laundry for these people, because I knew over the months of living there, I found out that these people are working 15, 18, 20-hour shifts in the oil field, very labor intensive. The last thing they want to do is now go sit at a laundromat for 6 hours waiting for a machine to open up, right, which is what they were doing. So there's big companies called like Schlumberger, Halliburton, they're very large oil companies. They ended up buying pieces of land around Alexander, and they put up these mobile home parks, but the mobile homes for employee housing. But these mobile homes did not come equipped with washers and dryers, right? So my little business in the summer of 2012 was I filled my mom and dad's basement full of washers and dryers, and I went around with my four-wheeler, knocked on all these trailer parks saying, hey, I will do your laundry. If you leave for your shift in the morning, you drop your bag of clothes. I have little segments, I ended up organizing it. You drop your dirty bag of clothes, I'll put it in the back of my trailer, I'll bring it home, wash it, starch it, fold it, iron it, whatever you need. And then by the time you get home, 10 hours, 15, 12 hours later, that bag of clothes will be sitting there completely finished. So you don't need to go to a laundromat and do it. So there was a 120 unit park a half mile away from my house, a short four-wheeler ride, and I had a little trailer for the laundry. And I had 90% of that park within 2 months I was charging $80 a load. So right now you can go get your clothes washed for $1.75 or $2 a load, right? So I was charging $80 a load. But to these people, they were making a ton of money, right? They had no problem paying it, especially when they don't have to go sit at the laundromat for 8 hours. So I started doing that, and then I made some money, and then a buddy of mine wanted to do car detailing. This was probably summer of 13 now. In the meantime, I'm in middle school, going to school, doing laundry, etc. And then come around to maybe the summer of 13 or so, I don't know the exact dates, my buddy started doing car detailing. So I joined him because I kind of got sick of folding laundry. And then we detailed cars. We had a few of our buddies working for us. An oil field area in Watford City was dirty trucks everywhere, right? So there was a big need for car detailing, and there was no car detailer in Watford City in 2013. So again, as you can imagine, we were so busy. We were detailing 3-4 cars a day, and our schedule was booked out for weeks. So we'd charge a couple $100 per vehicle. We didn't have much overhead. We just used his dad's garage, and we went on Amazon and bought chemicals, right? So, and rags and a vacuum and whatnot. So we detailed cars up until about 2016. It went really well. The laundry I kind of quit doing in the summer of 13, summer of 14. I just got very, very sick of doing that. But had some money, put some money away, kept saving it. And then detailed cars up until the summer of 16. where my parents said we're moving back to Minnesota because we had moved to North Dakota from Duluth in 2012. So now we're going to go back to Minnesota because they got out of the hole that they were in, and they were busy enough with work. But they said we found a house in Prior Lake, so in Minneapolis Metro. So we moved here in the summer of 16, where I continued to detail cars out of my garage going to high school. One business plan. So one of my biggest issues in Minneapolis detailing cars was getting people to give them to me. It was a much different story than it was in North Dakota. North Dakota is more company trucks. They could swap out a truck, leave me a truck for a day. It was no big deal. But my biggest problem in Prior Lake was people not being able to leave me their cars. Hey, I want my Suburban detailed, but can you do it Sunday afternoon because Saturday we have piano practice and soccer practice and this and that. So I thought to myself, I need to find a place where people leave their cars long term and they don't need them for a certain amount of time. So I thought Minneapolis Airport. So I approached Minneapolis Airport, I think that was the fall of 2017, and I asked them, I said, hey, I'd like to make a proposal to you guys. I'd like to start detailing cars on site. And I wrote up a business plan, we talked about it, I went and had a meeting with the Metropolitan Airport Commission. Ended up not working out, but I had a whole business plan there, and that I think got me into the door of how do you operate a business? How do you, because they asked me, write up a business plan, write up a proposal, how is that gonna work, right? And this is the MAC that you're dealing with, so it's very official. It's governmental too, so. I got a lot of experience there, not knowing what I'm doing. Like if I go back and read my business plan now, I'm like, geez, it wasn't that great, right? Yeah. But I had a lot of experience, or I gained a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience in doing that. And then in 2018, I became a real estate agent. I got licensed in the state of Minnesota here, graduated high school, and then began my career as a realtor.
Somewhere in this time frame is where you and I connected.
Yeah.
I want to say 2018.
Probably 2018 we connected, yeah. Summer of 18 I graduated. So May of 2018 I graduated high school, and then I got my real estate license right after high school. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do for a career, but I actually remember one of the pivotal moments was I put a post on Facebook when I lived in Prior Lake. I had a little bit of a following from my detailing because I posted on get your car detailed here, right? So I had some people following and everything else. But I put, hey, I'm graduating from high school in a few months. What are you guys doing? What are people doing out there? I have no idea if I want to go to college. I had good grades, I had the grades to go. I don't know if I want to go to college or do what. I have no idea what I want to do, right? So that post got a lot of attention, and I got a couple hundred comments of people saying, hey, I do this. It's really cool. You should come check it out. I do this, right? So I took a few of those meetings. And one of the meetings that I took was with Daniel DeRoche, with the DeRoche Realty Group here in Edina. And he ended up saying that, hey, I'm a realtor. Here's what we do. He's one of the top agents in the Twin Cities. And he got me pretty excited about it. So I said, okay, after high school, I'm going to get my real estate license and I'm going to become a realtor. And that's what I'm going to do for the next 50 years.
So that's what connected you in real estate?
Yeah, that's what connected me with real estate. And, over Facebook and stuff, you see videos of how to house hack. I bought a duplex and I renovated it and sold it for a ton of money, and you're like, wow, this guy made $50,000 in 3 months. That's crazy, You start looking at, well, if I go be an agent, my commissions would be this, and most agents fail in the first year, and all these doubts and stuff coming. And so I always looked at real estate, had an interest in it, had no idea where to start. Now I know, I didn't know then, but the biggest myth that I heard then, and I thought it was true, and I think a lot of people still think it's true, is you need 20% down to purchase income producing real estate, investment real estate. And that is the biggest myth, and we can get into that soon. But so I was like, well, that's a big barrier. I don't have any cash, right? I certainly don't have 20% down of a couple $100,000 building, so there's no way I can do that. So I'm going to become a realtor, and hopefully I'll gain some commissions and get some savings, and I can purchase something. In the meantime, I did have some cash from the detailing and from the laundry saved up, and I was waiting for a piece of real estate to come, but it certainly wasn't a ton, right?
So somewhere in this, the real estate portion is to sell houses for other people.
Right.
But at some point, you got into trying to find buildings for yourself.
Yeah.
How did that all come into place?
So that came into place. I was an agent, probably about a year into it. So I got licensed in May of 2018. So this was April of 2019. So 11 months into being an agent, I had sold some homes and had no intentions of leaving the realtor industry. And I was sitting in an open house on a listing of mine in Apple Valley. And I got a phone call from a guy. and I'll leave his name out of it. But he called me up and said, hey, I got your number from so-and-so, because in the meantime I had done some networking events of wanting to get into income producing real estate. You'd go on an app called Meetup, and there you can look up real estate stuff. And around the Twin Cities, people meet. If someone renovates a duplex or something, they might have a meetup there, and real estate investors would go there on an evening for a couple hours and walk this duplex and see what he did and ask questions. How do I do it too? But anyways, I made some connections, and well, let me back up a little bit. So the guy that got my number that called me at that open house, and I remember this like it was yesterday. A few weeks prior to that, I found a 12-plex for sale in Montrose. And I went to go look at this 12-plex, not knowing how I would finance it. I had a little bit of money, but not much. Maybe, I've heard the words contract for deed. I've heard the words seller carryback. I'm still kind of unfamiliar at the time with what that is. What's a contract for deed? How does it work, right? How can I purchase real estate without 20% down? Because you see YouTube videos all the time of that. I found a 12-plex in Montrose for sale, and I met the guy, not the owner, but the caretaker showed me the property. And I asked him, who owns this property? And he goes, some guy in the Twin Cities, he owns a few thousand apartments. And I was like, holy cow, can I get this guy's number? Expecting them to say, no, he's too much of a big shot for you or whatever, right? And to my surprise, he gave me his number. And I called him. Like, I left that place and I called him right away. I need to meet this guy, right? And I call him up and I have a conversation with him. I said, hey, I'm 18 years old, or maybe I was 19 at the time, and I want to purchase real estate. I don't have tons of money, and I'm looking for a mentor. Like, you've obviously done very well. I've heard that you have 1,000 or a few thousand apartments. Can I grab lunch with you? And again, kind of expecting, nah, I'm too busy for you, whatever. But he said, sure, yeah, let's grab coffee. So I think it was the next day or the day after, I went and had coffee with him and asked him all sorts of questions, as green as could be. And he was shared everything, any question I asked. He was kind of an open book, and it was great. I still, you can't just have one conversation with a guy and go be a real estate mogul, right? So it takes a lot of time. But he was an open book, and he said how he started and everything else, and it sounded great. Of course, he was 70 years old at the time, so he had been doing it for 50 years, right? And it's kind of like, oh crap, I want to be where you are right now. It's not possible. But I kept in touch with him. Every week I'd go have coffee with him. I'd bug him. I'd bug the crap out of him. And then 3 weeks later, I'm in an open house, and I get a phone call from another guy, not him. And he goes, hey, I got your number from the guy that I had met 3 weeks ago. I got your number from him. I have this pile of crap building down in Albert Lee, right on the Iowa-Minnesota border off 90 and 35. And I received it back on a failed contract for deed. I had no idea what he was talking about. I've heard contract for deed before. I don't know what that is, but yeah, I'm gonna act like I know what I'm talking about, right?
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, exactly. Fake it till you make it. Anyways, he goes, I want to sell this apartment. I'm not gonna lie, it's in rough shape. I called your friend asking if he'd want to buy it, and he goes, no, I don't want to purchase it, but I know a kid who might, and that was me. So he passed along my number. The next day, I went down there, I walked it. I wish I could show pictures. This building, it was rough. So it was the worst building in Albert Lee, in my mind. It's a 35-unit apartment complex, 4 stories tall. There's 2 buildings, one here and then one right across the road. One was 9 units and one was 26, so totaling 35. And I went and walked it. I brought my father-in-law and my dad, and they were like, no, like this. You would open up a cabinet and a cockroach would stand up and hiss at you. There was lights hanging from the ceilings. Half the hallway lights were out. Doors were off the hinges. There was people sleeping in the hallways.
Oh, this was rough.
It was rough. And I was like, no, I can't do this. And I don't know what happened in my mind, because I could be there yesterday. I remember this pretty vividly. I remember walking down the stairs thinking, I can't do this. No, I'm looking for a duplex. Maybe. I can't even afford this, number one. But we got up to the sidewalk, standing in front of this thing after a half-hour-long tour of just disgustingness. And he goes, so what do you want to do? And I said, I'll take it. And as I said that, I was like, my world is upside down right now. I don't know, I'm spinning. I have no idea what I just did. And we wrote him my father-in-law and my father were like, you're crazy. You're gonna give him, I should back up a little bit too. He said, I want to get rid of this building. I'll give you a deal. I'll sell it to you what I paid for it 13 years ago. It's run down since. But appreciation's happened since. I mean, just the market's got more, right? So he ended up selling it to me for $560,000, which is about $13,000 a unit. So that's, if people know real estate, 13,000 a unit is a steal, no matter what it is, right? So I said, yeah, I'll do it. Again, I couldn't even hear myself talk. I was so, I don't know what that feeling is. Maybe people have had that feeling before, but just sick to my stomach. What did I just agree to? So I gave him an earnest money check, and then we closed a week later. Right after I gave him the earnest money check, we went to McDonald's and ate on our way out of town. My father-in-law, me, and my father. And my father-in-law and my dad were eating, and I went in the bathroom and puked my guts out. I remember this so vividly. I sat over that toilet and I puked my guts out.
I never heard that part. Wow.
Yeah. What did I just do? And then I went home and told my wife that, yeah, I'm purchasing a 35-unit building 2 hours away. And I got
Who you just got married to?
I had been married for 2 months. Yeah, so 2 months. And we had no kids or anything like that, of course.
Yeah.
Right? We're 18 and 19. Anyways, I wish I could say the rest is history, but it certainly wasn't. I made a ton of mistakes in that building. I hired the wrong guys, went on Craigslist and found guys to work cheap because I had a budget to follow. And how did I finance the renovation? Because this whole building, like I said,
I was just going to ask that. Yeah.
So the whole thing needed renovated. So on that sidewalk.
Because you used up the bulk of your cash.
Yeah, I used up all my cash.
Okay.
I had no money in the bank after closing. He goes, here's how much your down payment's going to be. And I said, okay, I'll do it. It's a pretty low down payment. And I'll carry the rest on a contract for deed for 2 years at 5% interest. And I was like, hey, that seems like an okay deal. I think I know what a contract for deed is, right? I'll agree to it. And then he goes, I'll tell you what, I like you. I see some piss and vinegar in you. And I also want to get rid of this building. So I will finance the renovation up to $100,000. And I was like, oh, that's a lot of money. So maybe that could get this done. I hope it can get this done. Well, it didn't.
Got one of the floors done?
I got one of the floors done. I went floor by floor. I didn't even touch the 9 unit. I started with the 26. I renovated a floor, filled it up, renovated the next, filled it up.
Okay.
Well, about a floor and a half in, I ran out of cash.
Oh.
And I was in his office saying, I need more cash, and he's charging me 12% interest on this cash too. The $560 minus my down payment left a principal balance of like high fours. And he held that at 5%. But now the renovation loan on top of that was at 12%. And I'm a realtor. I'm doing my best to get transactions and get commissions to pay every month my payments to him. And I had no money. There was checks I wrote that I said, don't cash that till Monday because my commission's gonna take a couple days to get in my bank account. And then I finally finished a floor, got 6 apartments rented, and I had a little bit of cash flow to make the mortgage, right? I'm still negative, but it's a little bit less negative, right? And then a year later, I should back up again. He said, no, I'm not giving you any more cash. And I'm in tears in his office in Minneapolis thinking, this is it. I got 1 floor done through a ton of mistakes. Buying material here when I should have bought it here for a way better price. Hiring this guy when I should never have hired that guy because he turned out to be a thief, et cetera, et cetera. Just anything, you name it, went wrong. And then I was in his office begging for more money. I need to keep going. If I walk away now, you get your building back with 1 renovated floor. You got to keep my down payment. And I walk away. And it came very close to that.
Which wouldn't be a bad deal for him.
It wouldn't be a bad deal for him. No, he'd just go resell it and he kept my whole down payment money. So yes, he took a risk on me by borrowing me money, but at the same time, not so much because if I failed, he still won. He got the building and could resell it and keep my down payment. Whereas me, I would have all my hard-earned money completely gone, right? So I could not fail. Anyways, I couldn't find anyone else to give me money. He said, go find money elsewhere. I'm not giving you more money. You're wasting it, this and that. But anyways, long story short, he ended up giving me $20,000 increments. I'll give you 20 grand at 12%. Tell me what you did with it. Itemize everything, because right now you're blowing it. You're wasting money. So I did that, and I said, okay, I'm gonna buy cabinets here. He goes, no, go check this guy's price. Here's a phone number. Okay, well, he's 10% cheaper. Okay, so do that. Itemize everything, spend money very wisely, because right now you've been blowing it. And so I did that. And $560,000 later, I finished it. Or $600,000 later, I finished it. $560 was the purchase price, and then I owed him $600 of renovation. So as I did it, he gained more trust. Okay, you're getting more efficient, you're less wasteful, we'll give you more money. Then he'd give me an $80,000 draw and then a $100,000 draw, all at 12%. So it sucked. I had no cash. I was putting stuff on credit cards and trying to make it, right? And then summer of 2020, late summer of 2020, I finished. This is during the start of COVID and everything else. I finished that building. And it appraised at $2.3 million. And I had owed between the $560 purchase price, less my down payment, plus the $600 or so in renovation, I owed him, my payoff was $1.15 million. Half of the 2.3. So again, I didn't know what that meant. This entire time I'm clueless. I'm just playing it by ear, playing it by day. And then the bank says, yeah, we'll come appraise it because now you need to do what's called a refinance. Again, learning these as I go. Yeah, sure, I think I need a refinance. The bank comes in and says, okay, we're going to do what's called an appraisal to see if we can borrow money against this asset, to see if there's any risk on the table for us. Because if we borrow you money and you don't pay us back, we're taking the building. And we don't want to be underwater on the building. We want to make sure there's plenty of equity there for us to go resell it. Banks do not like risk. Anyways, appraised for 2.3. The bank said, yeah, we'll give you 1.7 against this asset. And I only owe 1.1. And then Jim said, hey, do this, get smart and say, okay, only take the 1.15 to pay me off, which I did. And
so Jim's the mentor?
Yep, Jim's the mentor. Yep.
Now, I would imagine at this point, just to put this in there, a lot of people want mentorship.
Yeah.
And they get the mentorship. I've experienced this personally. They get mentored. They don't receive it. They don't listen. They squander it. They want to hear all the stuff, but they don't want to do the stuff.
I can say the same. It was the same for me. That's why I wasted the first $100,000 draw. I got one floor done. So
I would imagine at this point,
it was the same for me. I blew it.
He's got to be feeling pretty good right about at this time.
Yeah.
That you figured it out. You figured out how to apply what he was teaching you.
Yep. And that was not without its struggles. I would disagree with him so hard, but I would shut my mouth and I would do it, thinking this is going to, I know better. I'm there every day. I know better.
And that's the key, though.
It turns out
you shut your mouth and you did it.
I shut my mouth. And
it's tough.
Yeah. I remember when I agreed to buy that building, he goes, if you can do this, he goes, kid, if you can do this, you can do anything in commercial real estate. And I remember those words all the time. I think back on that. And I remind him of those words because I'm still in touch with him today.
Sure.
And I go, Jim, remember that? We laugh about it now.
That's your foundation, man. That's awesome. Yeah. What a great story.
But anyways, appraised for 2.3. I took out the $1,150,000 that I owed him in a mortgage. Of course, this is during COVID, so the rates were 3%, so that was icing on the cake. And then I took a $500,000 line of credit. So the difference between a $500,000 line of credit versus taking the entire 1.7 that the bank was willing to lend, and then taking the $500,000, I would be paying on it, right? My mortgage would be much bigger with that $500,000 added to it. So rather than taking it out, because I didn't know what my next move was, I'm like, hey, this apartment thing, the last year and a half sucked. It was the worst year and a half of my life. 2 hours every morning there, and then in the evening, 2 hours home. Sometimes I'd pull all-nighters there, pulling wire and putting lights on the ceiling and painting. I generaled the whole project, and I helped where I could on the rehab. And then, so he said, don't take out the $500,000 that the bank's willing to give you. Put that in a line of credit, because then you're not paying on it, but it's available, right? Again, I had no idea. No one's ever told me this stuff. So I said, yeah, that sounds good. So the bank just opened up a checking account or whatever it looked like on my bank app. It looked like a checking account. Available balance, $500,000. You owe $0. And then he said, there you go. There's your nest egg for your future, right? Continue using that to purchase real estate.
Now, what was your cap rate on that building after you did the refi? And maybe explain that a little bit for people.
Yeah. So a cap rate is if you purchase a building for $100,000 and it produces $10,000 a year in income, that's a 10% cap rate. That's pretty good. A 10% is really good.
Yeah.
I see buildings today trading for 4 and 5 caps for new construction. For old stuff, you're probably around 7 or 8% cap rate. That building was a 14. Because remember, I paid $13,000 a door for it. I stole the building, right? But who else was in line to do it? Nobody.
You had to work for it.
I had to work for it. Yeah. So that's called sweat equity, right? So from paying $560 to it being worth $2.3, that was a year and a half of agony. I would never want to go back. If I had to go back, I would do it completely different. than how, today I would do that completely different than how I did it.
So you had a 14% cap rate
14%
on a
cap
building
rate.
after you refinanced it, renovated it.
Yep, kind of
And
the
now-
BRRRR method, right? So the buy, the rehab, the refinance, and the rent. So that's the BRRRR method. So that's exactly what I did down there. I did the BRRRR method without knowing what the BRRRR method was. I had no
Sure.
idea what it was. I've never heard of this
Your
term.
mentor did.
Yeah, my mentor did.
Yeah.
And he doesn't use acronyms. He's an old school guy. He never
Sure.
told me this is the BRRRR method, right? But anyways, fall of 2020, when the bank said, yeah, I'll give you all the money you need to pay off Jim. Because I'm thinking too, how am I, I make $6-7 grand a month in cash flow now, which is great. It's a
So this
great
is your
cash
first
flow.
deal with Jim.
First deal ever, and first deal with Jim.
Yep.
Yeah, first deal ever. I hadn't even owned a house. Me and my wife rented an apartment. So my first piece of real estate ever was that 35-unit apartment complex.
It's amazing.
And then, the bank said, I'll give you all the money you need to pay off Jim. And I was like, what did I just learn? What just happened? I worked for a year and a half and I created 1.1 in equity because I owed 1.15 and it was worth 2.3. So I could go sell it for 2.3 if I wanted to and pay off the 1.5 and keep that 1.2 or whatever it was, right? Assuming I got the appraised value. And then, I'd have to pay taxes on that. I could have left the transaction with $900,000 in cash, right? But I look back at the last year and a
So
half.
there's a little bit of tax mitigation in this too,
Yeah.
with the way that you set it up.
Oh yeah, because debt is tax-free. So by taking the debt out, the 1.15 that I owe Jim, that's tax-free. That's my basis. And then the $500,000 line of credit, that's not taxable. That's debt. If I take money out of that line of credit, that's debt. You don't pay anything in tax, right? And I didn't know that at the time. I know now, but I'm glad I had done that. I'm glad I did it now, right?
And I'm assuming he guided you a little bit through that?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah. Because by where he's at in the stage of life, he knows.
Oh yeah, he knows. Oh, at the time he owned 1,500 apartments in the Twin Cities and had probably gone through 5,000 in his lifetime, owning and selling and everything else. He's worth 160 million. I see his cash accounts all the time. He's got tens of millions in cash even today. Incredible with numbers. He knows his stuff. He knows real estate very, very well, as opposed to me, completely. I knew nothing, and I'm still learning every day. But I took that $500,000 on the line of credit, and it was time for me and my wife. She was pregnant with our first, to build a home. So instead of going to get a construction loan from a bank, I was like, hey, I'm a little bit of a real estate guru, right? I know what I'm doing a little bit. I just made $1 million on a deal. And I went and purchased land. I paid cash for the land. It was like 60-something thousand at that time. This was maybe 6, 8, 10 months after I refinanced Albert Lee. This was the next summer. So all that $6-7 grand a month in cash flow, I've been saving that up, right? And the expense in this building wasn't crazy because it was just rehabbed. There was not so much maintenance and stuff going on. So I saved up my cash, kept doing commissions, working my tail off, 100-hour weeks, and bought cash, and then used my line of credit to build a home. I built the home myself. I hired out some things. I hired out asphalt, excavation, concrete, drywall, countertops, but basically everything else I did myself. I had friends to help me with the HVAC and the plumbing and the electrical and stuff like that. Anyways, built my house, and the bank, again, comes in and does an appraisal when the house is built. This was in the beginning of 2022. I spent the summer of 21 building. And they go, yeah, the house is worth $800,000. And I'm into it for $380 on that line of credit that I had. And I was like, hey, well, now I need to put a mortgage on my house to pay that line back. So now I can use that line for continuing my growth in real estate. All I had was those 35 units at the time, and being an agent. And so then they said, yeah, sure, we'll give you 90% loan to value. This time it's a little bit different on residential. They'll give you a little higher loan to value than they will on commercial or income producing. So they said, we'll give you the $390 that you need on a mortgage, or $380, whatever it was. And then we'll give you another $260,000. And I was like, can I do that in a line of credit like I did my last one? And they're like, yeah, sure. So it's called the HELOC, right?
Yeah. And
So-
what made you ask that question?
No, because my first time, I was like, hey, it's worth how much? And I owe how much? So what's my equity spread? How do I tap into that without selling it, right? Because now we need a house to live in. I can't sell it.
Right.
So it all kind of comes full circle. It's building blocks, right? You
Yeah.
learn one and then you build off of it. So the bank goes, yeah, based off of your appraisal, we'll give you $260,000 in a line of credit on top of your mortgage. So we closed. I got a mortgage. I paid my line completely off. Now that $500,000 is available to me again. And then now my house, after I spent 5-6 months building it, I created another $260,000 in equity. It's debt. But now between the two, I have $760,000 available. And then I just got to work. I went and cold called. I was like, this real estate thing is kind of cool. My other buddies are working construction jobs. They're the best, they're awesome people, right? And they just were never educated, as was I. I kind of fell into the education by saying yes to an opportunity that, in hindsight, I'm glad I did, but geez, at the time I probably shouldn't have said yes. You know, I had no idea what I was doing. But I learned because I was forced to learn. But then after doing it a couple times,
Well, you forced yourself to learn,
Yeah.
so that you could make it.
yeah.
Yep.
After doing that project and everything else, it's like, okay, this starts to make sense. You owe this much, it's worth this much. The difference is called equity. If I sold it, I could get that equity after paying taxes and ending up with a heck of a lot less. Or I could get a line of credit against that equity, use it, put a mortgage on whatever, pay it back, right? Reuse it, reuse it, reuse it. So I got to work cold calling. I called every landlord in the 7-county area. You know, there's a lot of them. And
Carter's calling me again.
oh yeah. And I met you in the meantime too, just looking at cars and stuff on Facebook. You had some sweet cars, so I wanted to come meet you, and that's how our relationship started. But in the meantime, cold calling, door knocking, I don't care. I'll go knock on anyone's door. It's a little bit, it's hard to do. It's hard to cold call because cold calling has like a connotation where you're trying to sell someone something. You know, cold calling, it just has a negative feel to it. And you're like, hey, you know, but I've had the best experience cold calling because I'm trying to give them money. I'm trying to buy something from them and give them money. I'm not calling them to sell them a product, right? So it's a whole different thing. But and then I'll go door knock. So if I find out an apartment building, I'll go look up the tax address. I'll see who the taxpayer is on it, and there's an address, a mailing address. You know, it's not usually the apartment address. It's a house down the road. The guy that owns it lives over here, right? So I go knock on doors and say, hey, that you own this building down the road, or you own this building in so-and-so town, do you want to sell it? I called every building in Carver, Wright, Hennepin's a big, big county, so I don't know if I've called everyone in Hennepin, but Carver, Wright, McLeod, Meeker, kind of the west, that's where I lived, and Watertown is where I live.
And you want to talk a little bit about what made you target these areas?
Simply because that's where I live.
Okay.
I had no ulterior, you know,
There wasn't
fancy
a
targeting.
search with the county records as far as permitting or where people are building, developing?
No, I wish I could say I was that tactful.
Okay.
I'm not.
Okay.
But no, I just said, hey, within a couple hours of home. I did notice as I talked to landlords and stuff, they all seem to own stuff within an hour of their home. You know, for the most part. There's obviously exceptions. But I just started at my front door, right? Let's see this apartment across the road. Where does he want to sell it? And so I'd make 1,000 phone calls over a month, and I'd get 998 no's. Not interested, click. And then every once in a while I'd get a yes. So from 2022 to 2024, I picked up about 100 units. 16 unit here, 8 unit here, sometimes a contract for deed, sometimes a conventional sale now that I had my line of credit for down payment, right? And I picked up about 100 units. In the meantime, the two mentors, so remember the guy that got the phone call? So Jim, the guy that sold me Albert Lee, he got a phone call, or he called the other guy that owned a few thousand units. Remember, he owned that building in Montrose. I kept in touch with both of them. They're both very wealthy in real estate. They both know each other. They both have a lot of apartment buildings. So I kept in touch, and I'm still in touch with them. I just spoke to both of them this week, right? So they've been really good mentors to me. Anyways, from the beginning, that 12-plex in Montrose that I wanted to buy, that ended up not working out, but that's how I got Gary's number.
So Gary's the second mentor?
Yep, Gary's the second one. So I got Gary's number, contacted him, built a relationship. Jim called Gary, hey, I got this building in Albert Lee. No, Gary's not interested, but Gary knows a guy who might be, and that was me. So anyways, I kept in touch with these two guys, and I still am, like I said. And Gary had a 252 unit in the cities. And I've always liked that building. I've known it for a few years now. I've known what he owned. And I've always bugged him. I bugged the crap out of him. When are you going to sell me that building? You know, now I've got 100 units. You know, I'm doing a little bit better. I know kind of what I'm doing. When are you going to sell me this one? I really want to purchase this one. Anyways, December of 2023, he gives me a call and says, hey, I'm ready. I'm going to sell you this building. And I'm like, holy crap, this is a very large building. How am I going to finance it?
That's a big bite.
That's a big bite.
How much?
30 million.
Okay. How many doors? 252?
252.
Okay.
Yep. So he goes, I'm going to sell it to you on a contract for deed, because I couldn't go you need 20% down to buy something like that if he's not willing to do a carry for 20% down to $6 million, right? I didn't have $6 million. But he said, I'll sell it to you on a contract for deed, and I'll make your terms somewhat favorable because I've seen what you've done the last 4 years, and I'm happy that you've done it. I want to see you do well, and I'm getting old and I'm getting out of it, and I think you can run it. I think you have the wherewithal and the capabilities to run this property. So he sold it to me, and I closed January 2nd, 2024. So about a year and a half ago, almost a year and a half ago.
That was a quick call to close.
Yeah.
December to
it was
January?
like 30 days.
Wow.
Super quick.
Wow.
Yeah. Contract for deed. He didn't owe a penny on the property. He had it free and clear. So there's no bank involved, just between me and him. So I had to empty out my lines of credit, empty out all my cash accounts to barely come up with a down payment, but I did it.
You mind sharing the cap rate on that?
It was probably close to 6.5,
Okay.
7. So those bigger properties, it's a little bit of a lesser cap rate. And brand new properties are super low cap rates, right? I've seen them trade for 3s. I don't know how people are doing it.
Because the rates are so high.
The what?
The rates.
Well, yeah, right now they're high. So I've seen them trade for 3s and 4s. So when your interest rate of now 6.5 probably, if you're purchasing an apartment building using 6.5% money and your cap rate's 3%, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Right? So you're at negative. So I don't know how they do it. They must be doing it with very large down payments. It's mostly institutional, big corporations with a ton of cash that can do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Small guys like me can't purchase stuff like that. But anyways, purchased that large apartment complex. That puts me up to 350 units today. He's still got one other one. It's a 128 unit I really want to buy, so we'll see. But there is a couple people ahead of me that I think, he's going to give them opportunities to purchase it. So, but
you're not doing too bad.
No, it's going great. So between being a landlord, I'm also a realtor, like I discussed. Now I do hard money loans, so people building a home.
Tell me a little bit about that. What's the hard money lending about?
So hard money lending, I learned it from Jim. Surprise, surprise. These mentors, I keep them close. If you get mentors that are really good, you keep them close because a lot of times they don't plan to share things with you. It's not like, hey, I'm going to share this with him. But if you stick around them, you just pick things up, right?
Yep.
So I was like, what is hard money loan? That sounds sharky. That sounds kind of snaky or whatever. What does hard money mean? I have no idea what that means, right, at the time. And I just picked it up as I was doing Albert Lee. I, go sit in Jim's office, and a guy would come in, and he'd write him a check, and the guy would walk out. And I'm like, what just happened? He goes, oh, I just do hard money loans. That's a builder. He's going to buy some land and put some infrastructure in, and I'm financing it at a certain percentage, much higher than the banks. So I go.
And why would somebody want to do that?
Yeah.
Just for people that are watching.
So I'll just take it to a simple house. So people that are watching that want to build a house. I know a few buddies of mine are in Washington State, and they've been doing this for years. And I didn't know about it until a couple of years ago. When I started hearing about it from Jim, I started talking about it, and then all of a sudden I hear someone else is doing it. It's because as you talk about things, you start to hear certain other people doing that same thing. And they explained it to me that banks in Washington State are much more tough than they are here right now, but it seems like banks are getting more tough here to borrow money from. If you're a 20-year-old kid, or maybe you're freshly married, and you want to go build a house, because people from our church, it has nothing to do with the church, but just the people that we know, it happens to be around church, but we build our own homes, like I built my own home, right? Because you get a ton of sweat equity, hence that $260,000 line of credit I got against my home. If you build your own home, you can do it much cheaper than hiring it out. And at the end of the day, the bank does not care, the one that's going to give you your final mortgage, does not care how that home was built, whether you hired a 5-star general contractor and he built it for $500,000, or if you did that exact same home for $250,000 or $300,000. Maybe I'm being a little dramatic. It might not be half, but it might be 30% discounted because you're going to do it yourself. You're going to plumb it yourself, saving the labor on the plumbing. You might hire a plumbing contractor to do it for $30,000, where you could do it for $12,000 in material. You still got to buy the material, but you save on all that labor, right? You do that for the plumbing, the electrical, everything you can, right? So you might not be equipped to excavate it yourself. So you hire some things out, like I did. But banks go, hey, 20-year-old, you want to build a house? Well, there's some risk for me on the table as a bank, because if I give you money now, you need to order your lumber package and your windows, and you need to purchase the land. There's a lot of upfront costs. It might be $100,000 just to start. And right now, you're 20 years old, your credit's maybe newer, you don't have tons of down payment. There's a lot of risk for us. We're going to give you a check for $100,000. What happens if you disappear? We're in first position on this land, right? If we borrow you money, we put a mortgage against that land, a lien against that land. So we'll take that, but the land might only be worth 40. There's a lot of risk there. So prove to us this. Give me your tax returns. Give me your pay stubs. They really run you through the ringer to borrow money, which I get it. They don't want you risk, right? And then this person goes and builds the house. They do it themselves. During the construction process, they say, bank, I need my next draw. You know, I've run out of money, I need more. We're gonna need about 350 and maybe I'm 110 in, so I need another draw and another draw as we go. And then the bank will say, okay, well, if you want another draw for 50 grand, what happened to your last draw? Show me receipts, itemize all of that. And these kids are just trying to build a house. It's very tough to keep a bank happy and everything else, and that's just the way it's been done for years. And then a lot of times too, not every bank, but a lot of banks will say, well, if you're gonna borrow our money, we're gonna require that you use a licensed electrician, a licensed plumber to do the work. It's like, well, crap, I'm gonna plumb it myself, right? There might be a city inspection or something to make sure that what you're doing is right? But if you hire a plumber, well, now that kind of defeats the purpose, because now you're paying them labor, defeats the purpose of building it yourself. So with hard money, and I've done a few of them now, I'm trying to get more into it, is someone will come up and say, hey Carter, I want to build a home. I'm gonna do it myself. Here's the floor plan. I got the land. I want some skin in the game, so I'm not gonna do it with them with no money out of pocket. But they might say I have 10 grand. I'll say, okay, you're gonna put the first 10 grand down on this land. Let's just say they're purchasing land for 20 grand, a little lot somewhere. Say, okay, you put the first 10 in, I'll meet you with the second 10, and then I'll finance the construction. I'm not going to run you through a rigorous pre-approval process. However, at the end, when the house is done, you're going to have to get a mortgage to pay me off, to pay me back from the money I'm borrowing you to build it. So we're going to get you pre-approved based off of your current credit, your income, etc. We're going to get you pre-approved for a future 6 to 8 month out purchase of this house that you're going to pay me off on, right? So the banker out west that's been doing this for years, he's very good at it. I called him up, I said, hey, I want to start doing hard money loans out here for people, local people. And he goes, yeah, sounds good, send them over to me and I'll help you through it. I'll get the end mortgage to pay you back. So what we do is we charge, as a lender, I charge 2% and 2 points and 10% interest. So what does that mean? If you write up your floor plan and you say, okay, my house is $250,000 to build. You got your floor plan, you went and got your bids, your lumber package, concrete work, excavation, drywall. You got all your bids laid out. Here's what it's going to cost me to build this house. So I need a loan from you, Carter, for $250,000. So I'll say, okay, right away 2 points, because banks are similar. It might not be quite as high, but they pay for the convenience of instant cash and no bank breathing down your neck the whole time. So they go, we close, and they give me a check right then and there for $5,000, right? So it's hard money. So right there, they give me a check. That's my fee up front. And then I give them draws. So I'll give them 80 grand to start. And then every once in a while, I'll drive past. These are somewhat local homes, so I can drive past to make sure it's going up. And a lot of these people I know, so I trust that they'll do the right thing and build the home. And then they'll need another 80. They'll just text me, or 50, whatever it is, right? They'll text me, hey, I need another 50 grand. So I'll wire it within a few days to their account. And then they build it. I'm not really asking so much for itemization of draws and this and that, right? We keep some eye on it. I don't want to say it's all do whatever you want, blow the money, because there's a lot of risk, right? So I'm watching that too. But I trust that these people are doing it, and I drive by to make sure that the house is going up and the money is being spent where it should be spent. Anyways, toward the end of the process, we get the bank that pre-approved them to begin with, because I don't want to give money to someone who can't pay me back in the future. So they pre-approve them before I even give them a dime to say, okay, that's going to cost them $250. He'll need to pay you off $250. The house will probably be worth, based off local comparables, when it's done, it'll be worth about $400. So he'll have plenty of equity to play with. Now, a bank at the beginning, there's no house there. It's to be built.
Which is why they can't go to the bank themselves.
Yeah, and some, depending on your financial situation, you can, right? I mean, how else do young people build houses? It's just a pain. Very, very much so a pain. But a bank at the end of the transaction, when the house is built and it's there and you can touch it and it's worth something, the bank will lend on that all day long. Because if you don't pay them back, they take the house in foreclosure.
In your case, hard money lending, I'm assuming you're tying hard assets.
Yeah, so I'm in first position.
Yeah.
So I need to make sure there's no one, he doesn't owe money to anybody else, because he puts the first 10 grand in, and then I give the second 10 grand, and now that land is purchased under his name. I put a lien on that land, saying, hey, I'm in first position on the mortgage. If he doesn't pay me, I take it, right? And then as he's building, I give him the draws. He pays 10% interest every month. Is, you know, if you borrow, the first draw is $100,000, 10% of that's 10 grand, but then you divide that by 12 because there's 12 months in a year. So it's like $800 and some for the first month. And then the second month, maybe he borrows another 50. Well, that's like $400. So now you're adding the 800 because he still has the 100 out. and then another 50. So month 2, he owes me like 1,200. And then month 3, he borrowed another 50, it might be 1,600. And usually you build a house in 5 to 8 months. So you might pay me 10 or 12 grand over 5 or 8 months, 1,200 here, 1,300 here, whatever it is, in interest.
How many of these deals have you done?
I'm on my 4th one right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are they all successful?
Yeah, so far they're all successful,
Wow.
knock on wood. But I'm in first position, so if it's not successful, I take the house, I finish it myself, sell it, and there should be plenty of equity there, right? We're watching it the whole time. Like I said, we're not just, here's money, do whatever you want with it. We're watching and making sure. When I say we, I guess that's me, but Jim's helping me through it. He's been doing this for years. So I use him. And also Jim will help me finance a couple of them. So if I have 2 going on, I can't finance both of them. Jim said he'll step in, and he's done that on a couple of them. He's stepped in and we've co-financed it together.
So that's a great return on your cash.
It's a great return on the cash, right? Because for apartments, people that invest in apartments, they know that windows go bad, roofs go bad, asphalt parking lots go bad, they need to be replaced. So every month from all my apartments, I put cash away into an account and I don't touch it. I don't touch it. It's not to be used for play, that's not to be used for anything. Because one day I'm gonna need to replace a roof. And when that day comes, I can't have no cash. That's how dilapidated buildings start, right? And I'm not gonna have dilapidated buildings. I'll lose my tail on them if I do that. So all that money that's sitting there and growing every month, I could put that into an investment account, or I could do this. And these people I trust, they're hardworking people for the most part. We pre-approve them and vet them, make sure that they're good. And then you can make 10% versus I go throw it into an investment account and maybe make 4.5, 5, which I'm not gonna complain too much about that. That's pretty good too, but 10 is a heck of a lot better, plus those 2 points up front, right? And it's worth it for the borrower because they don't have to deal with the bank. They're not required to use licensed contractors for this or that. All they do is shoot me a text and say, I need $50,000 more. Maybe if I'm not around, I'll say, send me a couple pictures of the house. They'll send me a picture of a framed house. Then I'll wire 50 grand to their account. And then I just EFT every month on the 1st, the interest. So it's very, very simple.
And there's a lot of business owners that use this model for things that are not houses. They might use it for assets for their company.
Yeah, they might.
Increasing a fleet. As surprising as it is, there's actually a lot of people with really bad credit where the banks won't lend to them.
Yeah.
So they go to hard money lenders that are charging, you're at 10% roughly. Some of these guys are at 18 and even 20, 25%.
Just look at the credit card companies. They're at 22.
Yeah.
That's a form of hard money, credit card, right? It's a form of it.
Unsecured, but yeah.
Unsecured, sure. So I don't know anything about the business and the fleets, and I don't know anything
So you
about
stick
that.
with the houses.
I stick with real estate because you can be in first position, and I can take a house, and I kind of know what it's worth, right? Versus I can't. It's little. It's
and
not
they're
so
personally
easy.
guaranteeing it.
Yeah.
So you go after them
guaranteeing it.
personally
Yep,
too.
Yep. But I can't really go after someone's business, or maybe I can. I don't know anything about that, but I know real estate because that's what I've studied for the last 6-7 years.
So you'd just be locking them up. They wouldn't be able to borrow.
Yep.
You'd be taking their leveraging power away.
Oh, sure. Okay. So I don't know anything about that.
But yours is a lot more safe.
Yeah, I think so, but that's all I know, right? Anyways, when the house is complete, they say, okay, Carter, now I owe you 250 grand. I say, okay, the guy that pre-approved you in the beginning, around, obviously he's been in contact with them, but a month prior to being finished, he'll get him rolling, get the appraisal done, get all the underwriting and stuff done, and then they'll close. So they'll appraise it for 400. He only owes 250. Well, now a bank is thrilled to loan on that because there's no risk. I'll give the kid 250. If he doesn't pay me, I take a $400,000 asset. Yeah. Matter of fact, if he fails, I don't really care. I make a lot of money.
In all honesty, you're setting it up so that, if they do fail, it's favorable.
It's favorable, absolutely. You don't want them to fail, right? But if it happens, we're protected because I'm not going to lose $250,000.
Yeah.
That would hurt. That would hurt me bad. Anyways, at the end, the bank says, yep, here's your mortgage. They pay me off and we're done. They just carry a normal mortgage with the normal bank for 30 years or whatever they agree to. And that's that.
So where in this timeline do we get to talk about the bucket invention?
Yeah,
the patent,
so the bucket invention. So,
because that's been in the work for a long time.
7 or 8 years I've been on this project. So I invented and patented a 5-gallon bucket. Maybe you can show photos on the screen. It's a 5-gallon bucket with a flat edge on it, so you can tip it over and you can sweep things in. But when the bucket's upright, that same flat edge is used as a paint roller tray, so you can take a standard 9-inch roller, and maybe on our next interview I can bring a bucket in and show you. You take a roller and you can roll on that same flat edge, so you don't need to get a dustpan, you don't need to get a paint tray. I also put a spout in the front of it So now you can make your pour, you can do a nice controlled pour. A lot of times on 5-gallon pails with paint, you pour and it sticks to the side and ends up on your shoe. It's a big pain in the butt to pour to those things. So, and there are spout attachments and stuff that you can purchase and click them on, but that's just another piece that you have to keep track of and clean, right? Mine's all built in. I also put measurement increments on the exterior, which we've seen that before, and then I put them on the interior of the bucket as well. A lot of times I've never seen interior measurement increments. They're not engraved, they're the opposite, pushed out or whatever you would call it on the plastic, right? They're molded into it. And then let's see, on the bottom I push the floor up so there's a better grip. So you have a better grip than a regular 5-gallon pail. You have a built-in spout. You have measurement increments on the outside and on the inside. You have a dustpan built in, and you have a paint tray built in. So again, you can show photos on the screen of that. But this last weekend, I was in Orlando. So True Value, have you heard of True Value?
Yeah.
And Do It Best.
Mm-hmm.
So they are now together. Do It Best purchased True Value last fall.
How big are they?
They're 8,000 stores.
Wow.
And they're in, of course, the U.S. dominantly. And then they have stores in Aruba, Puerto Rico, Guam, the kind of random spots in the world.
Okay.
So I was in Orlando. I was invited by Do It Best because I showed them this product last fall, and they loved it. And they said, we want this in stores. So then I went to, I built a mold for it. That mold will be done in a week and a half. I patented it, but this has been a long time coming as far as the design because it costed so much money to get off the ground. I invented this in 2017, but didn't have money, and it took time to engineer it and get the CAD drawings right, get the design right, get the mold going, get the patent. So this took a long time.
And you had a little 3D printed one that you showed me the last time we met.
Yeah, a small 3D printed
So what do you think this cost you?
The mold.
The whole thing?
The whole thing.
project?
I'm into it now about 200,000.
Wow.
It's been a lot. So the mold itself was 155,000. Yeah. And
what got you started in this? What made you think of it? How did you come up with it?
How
did you know you could bring it to market?
Right. So I didn't. Much like a lot of stuff that I do, I have no idea. I just go. And also, today we're talking about all the things I've done. Mm-hmm. We don't talk about all the hundreds of things I've tried and failed at.
Sure.
There's a lot more of those.
That's very underrated.
Yeah.
A lot of people overlook that stuff.
Right. So we're just talking about the things that maybe have gone somewhere. But it was actually my dad that invented it or thought about it. So he was in a basement doing a plumbing job. He's a plumbing contractor, like I said before. And there was a pile of dirt on the ground, and he couldn't find a dustpan. He had a little broom, and he couldn't find a dustpan. The only thing that he had was a 5-gallon bucket in the corner. So he grabbed the bucket, and he tipped it over, and it's rounded, right? So when it's on its side, it's rounded. You couldn't get the dirt in there. He was squishing it down, trying to get the dirt in there. And then later that night, he comes home and says, I had an idea. Why isn't there a flat edge on a 5-gallon pail? And then he left it at that. We continued on about our night. I was like, yeah, great. And then a couple days later, I was thinking about it, and I was like, why isn't there? So I go out on a piece of paper, and I kind of drew up what it might look like, and look, I have images of these first drawings. If I can share them with you if you want. They're terrible. And then I brought it back to my dad. I said, hey, you mentioned this, and I can't stop thinking about it. This was 2017. I'm detailing cars in their garage in Prior Lake at the time. And I go, I can't stop thinking about it. This could be something, maybe. I don't know. And he goes, yeah, if you want to run with it, go ahead, So I said, you want to be my partner on it if I go do something? The odds are 1 in a million that will be on store shelves, but why not try? It doesn't hurt to try. So he goes, yeah, sure, I'll be your partner on it. And then so I took the design, and then he thought of the flat edge for the dustpan. And then I innovated it a little bit to the paint as well. So the paint tray and dustpan in one, the spout, the increments, the better grip. So I innovated it a little bit. And as the design went, we're like, hey, could this feature work? Yeah, throw that in there, right? So again, not as strategic as you might think. Just started designing, and ideas came as we went.
And then you have to have a lid for it.
Yep, we're designing that right now.
Okay.
So anyways, I bought apartments and stuff in that 2020 time, so I kind of let it fall by the wayside. It's very hard to get a product on shelves. From an idea to on the shelf where people can buy it is quite the journey I've found out.
Were there any stores that were interested in it that you approached?
Back in the day, no, because
Okay.
I just had a CAD drawing on a computer. It didn't exist, right? But I thought, let's patent it, because I guess that's what you do when you think of an idea, right? So I went and patented it. I've updated my patent since because we've had some more features added on to it and whatnot. But about 1.5 years ago, I picked it back up. And because I let it go while I bought apartments, kind of forgot about it. I didn't have money. I certainly didn't have money during that apartment renovation, that first one. And then 1.5 years ago, I keep thinking, every few months I think about it. I'm like, I wonder, you know. And then I brought it to a CAD guy and I said, hey, can you make this for me? Actual real life size one, I want to use it. So $5,000 later for 3 buckets, he sent me 3D ones from China. And I used them for like a month in my garage. I took stuff in, I tipped it over, swept things in, dumped it out in the garbage. I used the paint tray on a paint project, and I'm like, this is great. I like it. I'm a little biased, but I love this thing. And then I went and showed it to Menards, and they're like, hey, this is kind of cool. We like it. And
I mean, was this just a cashier that you showed it to, or?
Well, I showed it to many cashiers. I showed it to anyone that would listen.
Okay.
But I actually got a meeting. I went to talk to a general manager of Menards, and I got a meeting with corporate in headquarters in Eau Claire. So this was last fall. I took it to them and I said, hey, here's my prototype. It's already patented, and I hadn't purchased a mold yet because I wanted to see what they said, you know.
Yeah. And
in hindsight, it's hard to say what I should have done or whatever, but I didn't want to invest the money into a mold without having some interest. But it's hard for them to get interested when it doesn't exist. So you got to take some risk there. I've found out and I've done. And they said, yeah, we're interested. We like it. They set me up in their system. I'm a vendor in their system right now. I have a SKU for it and everything. I have insurance. I'm part of the partner's website, the whole 9 yards.
What kind of insurance do you need for something like this?
Just certificate of insurance for if you have a pallet of buckets and they fall over on someone, they're going to sue you. You need to have insurance for that. Oh, wow. So they require all that stuff. If you have products in their warehouse, you must have insurance. They run me kind of through the ringer with other paperwork, and I did it. And then
even though it'd be they're spilling over and it'd be on their property, and
yeah, it's hard to say.
Interesting.
You know, someone that does products might watch this and say, no, that's not why. You might need it for this and this. So I don't know.
Sure.
So again, I'm learning.
Anyway, you needed it.
Yeah, and they said we're really interested. They set me up as a vendor, and then they said we might be able to get you in this spring. It's kind of tough. So this spring they notified me that we couldn't fit you in, but this fall come back. So I do hope to get into Menards. But in the meantime, I showed it to Do It Best. I just went on their website, submitted a vendor submission, new product submission, and they reached out to me right away.
How much will these buckets sell for?
$11.99
okay.
Retail, and that's at Do It Best. So those small town hardware stores are a couple bucks more. So at big box, Menards, Lowe's, Home Depot, we're not in there yet. I hope to get in there. I'm hoping $9, $10, right? But if you go purchase a regular 5-gallon pail, a dustpan, a paint tray, a spout attachment for a 5-gallon pail, you're at $25. So this is much, much cheaper. I've since purchased my mold. After Do It Best called me to headquarters, I went to Indiana and showed it to them in person. And they loved it from day one. They were incredibly supportive, and they were great to work with. They still are. And they said, you need to come in March. We want this product. We're going to set you up as a SKU. You can actually go on doitbest.com and look up Multi-Pail. We're on the website now.
Multi-Pail?
Multi-Pail is the name of it. I wanted Better Bucket, but that was taken, trademarked. Yeah. So I was like, dang it. So I had to come up with another name. So Multi-Pail is what I came up with. So we're trademarked on that now. It's kind of a silly stock image that they have on the Do It Best website right now, and it's kind of it's like a beginning listing, right? So I went in there and I've edited it and everything else and submitted to Do It Best for their website guy to go update and clean up the listing. But you can go look up Multi-Pail on the Do It Best website, and it says currently unavailable because my mold is about a week away from being done. So next week my mold will be complete, and I'm flying to Detroit to watch the first bucket come out.
Cool,
so I'm very excited for that.
Made in America.
Made in America, yeah, all made in Ohio. So wow. I have to go, Detroit is where the manufacturing facility is for the mold. And then they're going to transport the mold when it's complete and all the tests are completed and it's running well. They're going to transport the mold to a plastics manufacturing company in Ohio. Lordstown, Ohio. I guess it's a manufacturing town. I don't know much about it. But that's where they're going to place the mold and spit the buckets out. But more importantly, last weekend I was invited to Orlando to the Do It Best / True Value Spring Market. This is where all the vendors get together and they show their products, and all the store owners. So it's a different business model than Menards and Big Box. It's kind of a co-op / maybe it's a franchise. I don't think they call it a franchise. But if you wanted to start a hardware store, you could go find a location, start a hardware store. You could get Do It Best to come in and give you like the infrastructure. We'll give you access to all the product. We'll give you the access to the POS systems and show you kind of how to run a hardware store. And then you order product through us, right? So random guys own these stores and they're a member of Do It Best, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So all these members of these 8,000 stores that they have worldwide, most of them, not everybody makes it, but most of these people come to Orlando. and they walk around this convention center, and we all have booths, and they're looking at products, and they're making orders. So I had no idea what to expect just a week ago. And I went down there, I set up my booth, I had all my prototypes done because my mold is done in a week, so I don't have actual buckets. So I was unfortunate that the date was not maybe a month from now when I could have real buckets there, but the prototypes are like 99% accurate. They're pretty darn close. It was the most bizarre thing. I had no idea what to expect, but I had people shaking my hand saying, why hasn't this been a thing forever? And I had thousands of buckets ordered at that convention.
Wow,
this
so
was
what a
just last
kickstart.
weekend. What a kickstart. I'm still waiting on Menards. I still want to get into Menards with a green Menards bucket with the Menards logo on it. I shop Menards all the time because they're local, but Do It Best has been great. I'm now starting to shop at Do It Best, local Do It Best in True Valleys, to support them because they've been a huge supporter of mine. At headquarters, they're just, every time I email them, they're responding with super awesome responses. They're energetic about it.
I mean, are you thinking about production numbers? I mean, what can this place in Ohio kick out per day?
Oh yeah, I have all this data.
Okay.
So my mold will kick out about 56,000 buckets a month.
Okay.
I make the buckets. Well, I better not get into prices too much.
Yeah, you don't need to get.
You're right, but they'll retail for $11.99. Yeah. And then it sounds like Do It Best. I don't have this on paper yet, but they told me last weekend that in the coming weeks we're going to get you an order. Sounds like they want 1 truckload of buckets per warehouse, which equates to about 50,000 buckets sold. From all these orders I got last weekend. So every store, they just want a pallet. A pallet comes in 120 buckets. So we should be stacked around the store. I heard last weekend we want a lid. We want liners. So I'm working on getting a paint liner. You can put a liner in a bucket, use your paint. When you're done, you throw the liner in the trash.
Just like a roll tray.
Exactly like a roll tray, yeah. Yeah, except for you don't need the roll tray anymore,
exactly.
Right? And then a lid, just so you can snap on your lid and you can turn the bucket upside down and shake it and the paint won't come out, right? And the paint won't dry out, etc. So that's what I've been working on lately. I'm still looking at purchasing apartments. I still want to grow in that game. I still want to grow in the hard money stuff. Realtoring, being an agent is fun. It's really fun. I do it for friends and family. So I don't know if I'll ever let my license go. We'll see how busy I get.
So you're not out there doing it for income, you're doing it for fun.
It's fun. Now it's become fun. At first, it most certainly was income. But now the apartments have replaced the income of that. But it's just fun to go show a young couple a house or whatever and sell a house. It's not a difficult job to actually do. The difficulty is having them call you and not the 1,000 other agents they could call, right? That's the hard part about being an agent. The actual selling of the home is easy.
How many agents are there?
In the Twin Cities, 24,000 or so. Don't quote me on that number, but it's right around 24,000 in the Twin Cities. Note that we're knocking on 4 million people. I don't think we're quite 4 million in the Minneapolis metro, but there's a lot. But yeah, 24,000 agents.
And what are you seeing in the real estate market right now?
Spring.
A lot of people ask me about that.
Yeah, spring is firing up. Most of my listings sub 400. It seems like I'm pending on 4 to 5 deals at a time at any given time. I'll sell a couple, close them out, a couple more will jump on. So it seems like I'm always dealing with 4 or 5. And sub 400, sub 450, those are flying off the market, even still with this interest rate environment. So I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not an economist, but listings are selling and my buyers are out there looking. I have one listing right now, it's almost 900,000 and it's been sitting for 40 days. So not crazy uncommon for a price tag that large, but I'm kind of like, okay, let's get this thing sold. My average list price is probably $350, $400. Okay. So people that I know.
So you're not really playing with the $2
I'm
million
not playing with the big stuff, no. Had I not bought real estate or something, that was absolutely my target. It's going to become a luxury broker. But I've learned that apartments are much more rewarding. In a nutshell, as an agent, you can work hard on getting leads, nurturing that lead, someone to sell their house or someone to buy a house, right? That's a lead, a client. And you can work hard with them trying to find something or trying to get them to use you instead of the other agents that they could use to sell their house. And then you finally get the listing or the agreement, whether it's a buy or a sell. And then you do all that work, to get the transaction done, and then you get paid once. You might get $15,000, $7,000, depending on the size of the transaction. On a $300,000 house, you're probably walking away with $7,000 or $8,000 as an agent after the broker cuts and everything else.
Is that your average deal?
Yeah,
okay.
$7,000 or $8,000.
How many do you do a year?
Last year, I think I did 22
or
so. But, and don't quote me on that number, maybe 20.
Yeah. So 160 a year roughly?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Anyways, but that deal's done and that deal will never feed you again. Maybe a referral will come out of it. It's kind of hard to measure that. But versus an apartment building, I spend that same energy focusing on an owner of an apartment building to sell to me instead of focusing on a person to let me sell their house for them as an agent. I focus that same energy on this owner, and I bug the crap out of them. I don't care to be annoying. One book I read, Grant Cardone, and he's kind of consequential. People say this or that about him, but one thing I remember in one of his books was what I was talking about, cold calling earlier and door knocking. I'm kind of nervous to go knock on a door. Now I'm not, because I've been doing it for so long, but prior I was super nervous to go knock on a door. But in his book, he said, when you cold call, because I'd dial the number and I'd look at that send call button and I'm like, what am I gonna say? And I have a little script in my head. Okay, here's what he's gonna respond with. Here's how I'm gonna counteract it. All right, I think I'm ready. And then he says something completely different, good or bad. And now my whole script is gone, right? So Grant Cardone, he goes, don't think about it. Dial the number and click send and just put it to your ear and go. Don't think about what you're gonna say, because you're gonna butcher it. You're gonna sound like a rookie. You're gonna sound like a phone sales agent, right? So that really helped me. That's one thing I think about a lot. So door knocking, cold calling, going to Menards to approach them about a bucket, trying to buy an apartment complex. Just do it. Put your pride to the side and just do it. Because I don't think on the other side, it's all in your head. On the other side, the person receiving your phone call, the person receiving your door knock, they're great people. They don't care. They just have a conversation with you. Everything is inside your head saying, you're going to look stupid. You're going to make mistakes. They're going to see right through you, right? All that crap is in your head. And I still struggle with that, of course. People do.
I was just going to say, it's kind of similar to these podcasts.
Yeah, it is.
You get in front of the camera, it's like we can sit here and have a 3-hour conversation all day.
Oh, for
sure.
sure.
You put a camera up and it's like,
it
hey
changes
man,
the whole
what are we
thing.
going to talk about? Hey, do you have a script? Hey, any questions? It's like, dude, just talk.
For sure.
Just get with it.
That reminds me about this Do It Best thing in Orlando. They put my bucket on stage in front of all the members. There was 4,000 or 5,000 people in that thing, and they talked about my bucket and said, hey, we're really excited about this product. And the manager of the paint department that I'm working with, she was the one that presented it. I didn't go up on stage. I was never asked to. And I asked her, I said, were you nervous? And she goes, oh, I was so nervous, getting in front. My palms were sweating. I was freaking out backstage, and I was like, you looked great. You did great. I didn't think anything of it, Isn't that so funny how it's all inside your head?
It's all in the head, man.
Right. But back to what I was saying, I can, as an agent, I can chase down this person. I can get this. It pays you the one time, right? Working hard, being an agent. And if you do it over and over, you can make a good living, sure. But once you do a transaction, it'll never pay you again. Versus buying an apartment building, I'll put that same energy in, and I'll get an apartment building, and I get paid 4 different ways from that apartment building every month. Number 1, I get rent, right? So every month, it doesn't matter if I go to Florida for a month. If you leave your buildings, they will fall apart. So you have to have management there, right? Whether it be you or someone else, you can't let your buildings fall apart. Just because you buy an apartment building does not mean it's a piggy bank forever. You got to take care of it. But if I went to Florida for a month, it'll still pay me rent. If I'm here working my tail off on something else, it'll still pay me rent. I don't have to go ask a boss for time off. I don't have to do any of that, right? So number 1. Number 2, appreciation. That real estate deal will never appreciate for you. You're just a person getting a commission in the middle of a buyer and a seller, right?
Yep.
They're the ones that got that appreciation and stuff.
Yep.
You just get a fee, and that fee, once it's spent, it's spent. It's done. I'll never feed you again. So I get what's called appreciation. The thing goes up in value over the years. If you look at real estate in the last 200 years, it's gone up, right? Mom and dad bought a house back in the 80s for $55,000. Now it's worth $400,000, right? That's appreciation.
10% a year, baby.
Yeah, or whatever it is. In commercial real estate, they say 2 to 3% on average per year. The 2008 crash and stuff like that, there was definitely a hurt, right? It went down for a couple of years, but if you just held on, it'll come right back up. So it generally trends up, and then there's obviously small dips here and there. That's with anything. So I get appreciation every year. I mean, if you want to put it in a month, sure you can, but every year I get a few percent of appreciation. If I paid $1 million for a building, in 1 year it's worth about $1,030,000, right? That's a form of income. That $30,000, if I wanted to take it, I could either get a line of credit, like we discussed, tapping into that equity, or I could sell it and get that. Of course, I have to pay taxes then, which I don't like to do. So that's rent, which is cash flow, and then appreciation, and then there's what's called depreciation. So on real estate, depreciation is basically, I won't get too into it, but in a nutshell, you pay taxes on income, right? But if you make negative money, you don't pay any tax, right? And I'm talking income tax. Like I pay employment tax for the 10 employees that I have, or 9 or 10 employees that I have. I pay property tax. I pay 750 grand a year between all my properties and property tax. So I think I pay my fair share in taxes. However, the one column of income tax, the IRS says, and I'll use this $30 million building for an example because the numbers are bigger and easier to understand. But the IRS says, okay, you cannot depreciate land. So we'll start there. You paid 30 million. What's the land worth? Let's just say it's worth 2.5. So now you're left with 27.5 million of property. And I use this number because it fits perfectly, but the IRS, I don't know how they come up with this number, but they said you can depreciate your assets over 27.5 years. 27.5 million after I take the land out. So that's an even $1 million a year that I get in what's called depreciation. So before I start talking, before the year begins, 2025, before it begins, I get negative $1 million. If I did 27.5 million in real estate, 27.5 years, $1 million a year negative on my tax return. And then I get my mortgage pay down and all that in principal that I paid down, my cash flow and everything else, and they build that in there. So now I'm negative, let's just say 200,000, right? Congrats, you don't pay anything in tax on that, right? You made 800,000 between negative 1 million and negative 200,000. You made 800,000 in income on that one property between mortgage pay down and cash flow and this and that. I'm making these numbers up.
Yeah.
But you don't pay anything in tax on that. Versus if you go get, as a realtor, I don't have depreciation as an agent. If I made 800,000 in this example in commissions, I'd pay 35, 40, 50% to the IRS, maybe 40-ish, depending on your tax bracket, but 800 is a pretty high tax bracket, right? You pay a lot of money to the IRS, you end up with 500,000-600,000 net. So for me, I got to take all the cash flow that I made and use depreciation, and then since I'm a real estate professional, it's what I do. I at least do 750 hours a year of it. I can take any other income, bucket income, which there's none of yet to be determined, real estate income, hard money loan income, and I can put that in my depreciation and pay very little in tax, if nothing, on those as well, right? So depreciation's huge. So you got mortgage.
Active losses.
What's that?
Active losses.
Yeah, so.
As a real estate professional.
Exactly, yep, and then when I end at negative 200, on paper I'm broke. Like, this guy made negative 200 grand last year, right? I can also take that and move, it's called a loss carry forward. I can carry that to the next year. So now next year I start with my negative million again. Well, I had to take my negative 2, so now I'm at negative 1.2 for next year. But as the years go by, you start to raise rents and you pay down more on your mortgage. And I'll get to that in a second, what I mean by that. Then your income starts to climb, and then over the years, so that 27.5 years, you start to make money, and then you're going to start paying taxes. But then most investors, and I probably plan to, is once I run out of depreciation, I'll sell that asset and do it what's called the 1031 exchange into another one and restart that over. We can get into 1031s another day, but so that number one is cash flow, how I make money in real estate every month, and how every real estate investor makes money every month, as opposed to a regular job, 9 to 5, flipping houses, being a realtor, right, in my case. So number one, cash flow. Number two, appreciation. Goes up in value every year while you're the owner of it. Number three, depreciation. And then number four is mortgage pay down. So every month, I have a very large mortgage on that $30 million building. It's about $140,000 a month. If I look at my amortization schedule, just lays out all my mortgage payments over the years and what I pay down, it's not exact, but it's about $100,000 a month in interest that I pay, which is completely tax deductible, right? And then $40,000 in principal pay down. So month one, I pay down 40 grand on the 30 million. I had my down payment. Let's just say I owe, for easy numbers, I owe 29 million. Now I owe 28,960, and then 28,920. Every month I make that $40,000 a month payment. The IRS looks at that as income.
Yeah.
That's income.
Because you're depreciating the asset.
Exactly. So now 40 grand times 12 is about 480,000 a year that I made. I never seen that money because I paid that money out.
Correct.
But it's creating equity by paying it down. That is income in the IRS's eyes. So I use that against a negative million, and then any cash flow, a few $100 grand in cash flow, I put that in. So that's how I come up to that negative 200 and I roll over. But in a nutshell, being an agent's great, but you get paid the one time is what I found out.
Yep.
Being a landlord and owning real estate, does it come with its headaches? Sure. Leaky toilets, leaky roofs, tenants not paying rent every once in a while? Sure, there is their share of headaches. But you get the appreciation, the depreciation, the mortgage pay down, and the cash flow. So that makes it super, super worth it.
And then what about, you said you have 10 employees. Are these property management team staff? Or?
Yep, so a couple of them are part-time. And then at Gateway Commons, a 252, that requires a full staff. So we have 2 full-time property managers, 1 full-time groundskeeper, and 3 full-time maintenance men. So
Okay.
it's 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I have a few more part-timers for about the other 100 units that I have, but they're all smaller buildings, 16 units, 8s, 24s, 35 in Albert Lee. So those don't require a full-time on-site staff. So you have a couple guys that do part-time stuff for you that do maintenance and whatnot around those properties.
And then what about how many doors do you have?
350.
So you're at 350.
It's
So
right around 350.
So in 7 years, you own roughly 350 doors.
Yep.
How much in real estate?
About 40 million in real estate.
So you're 25 years old, you own about 40 million in real estate.
Yep.
How much do you think is debt?
I know my debt's about almost 31 million.
31?
So I have about 8 million in equity.
Okay. And a lot of these properties are on a finance schedule where you're seller financed or you're going through traditional?
Yep, so only one of them is on seller finance right now. Everything else I've got traditional mortgages, because even if you do a seller finance, within a couple years you balloon, and then you got to go to a bank and get a mortgage just to pay the seller off.
Yep.
And then you just put that on a regular 25-year.
Are you setting these up on 10-year, 20-year?
Banks will do maximum 25 on investment, so I do 25.
25.
You know, as I get older and I have more properties and I don't need the cash flow, I'll start to hopefully put them on 15-year notes or 10-year notes if I can, but sometimes that doesn't make sense because your mortgage payment is so high that it exceeds the income of the property, right? So if you want a cash flow, you got to push it out to a 25-year loan.
For your bucket that you're launching, when is that going to drop?
That should be in Do It Best warehouses mid-June and on Do It Best and True Value store shelves mid-July.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, you got a lot going on at 25 years old, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. It's busy, but it's all I do.
I bet your mentors and your parents are pretty proud.
I hope so. But I work hard. I got 3 children and a wife, so I do it for them. But I love it. If I had a full-time job, people might say, well, how the heck do you do this, right? But if you have 60 hours a week wide open, it's actually pretty easy. And I'm looking for more. So some people might think that's crazy, but I love it.
What's your goal? You're a schedule organized person. I know you got a drop pin out there somewhere.
I don't know if I'm as scheduled as you think I am. I don't really have a goal. I love having fun.
Okay.
This is all I'm doing is having fun. Who thinks of a bucket and wants to put it on shelves? That's so random, but it's so fun. I have no idea how to do it. I'm just gonna go out and start banging doors down and getting answers, right? Try this avenue, it fails, and try this avenue and it fails. Try this one and it works, right? And then it gets you to the next thing. So hard money lending, I learned it, and then I'm wanting to do it. I want to get bigger in that. There's a reason why banks have the nicest buildings in town. There's no other business like lending money. It's a great business.
Yeah.
Apartments, I love it. I love the people. I love the atmosphere. I love the appreciation and all the advantages to owning apartments. It's great. Bucket, I don't know how it's going to do. Who knows? Maybe on our next podcast you can do a clip of this and say, well, here's where you were and here's where you are now. Hopefully we're at tons of sales. But it's interesting when you tell your buddies of a product or anyone, everyone's always so supportive. Oh, it's so great, you know? And if you were to say something like, well, I have one in my trunk. Do you want to buy one right now? Well, I don't actually need one, you know? That's so funny. People are so supportive. When I went to this Orlando thing, people literally wrote checks for it. So in my mind, that's a completely different thing than people being supportive of your cool idea, you know, to people actually putting orders in and they want 3-4 pallets at their store. So that's what I learned this weekend, and that's a brand new milestone as of end of March 2025. So I'm very excited to see what the future brings with it.
Man, I'm excited for you.
Yeah.
You've accomplished a lot.
Thank you.
We touched on family, touched on the real estate journey, touched on your, career-wise, and then also for income and more of, I don't know, can't really call real estate investment a hobby, but you've kind of turned it into one.
Yeah, well,
You've done a really good job with it.
I simply love what I do, you know, and I have no idea where it's going to go. Would I like to get to 1,000 apartments? Yeah. Why? I have no idea. I just threw that number at the wall, right? Sure. We'll see where it brings. But like I said, I'm 25. God willing, I have the rest of my life in front of me, and we'll see where it goes. I have no idea where it'll go, but just live every day, you know, and keep pushing forward and do cool stuff, because why not? We're just all humans wandering aimlessly on this rock we call a planet. Why not do fun, off-the-wall, stupid things? You're going to fail. I failed more times than, you know, people that give me, because you hear your share of criticism, right? Mm-hmm. But I can guarantee I've failed more times by far than they've tried, as far as trying a new startup or trying this, right? So people, the haters out there, the people that, because you hear it here and there, oh, so-and-so said this about you that was negative. It's like, well, they have no idea the sleepless nights that I had in 2019 and 2020 renovating that building when people were stealing from me. People wouldn't show up. I was wasting money, a lot of it self-inflicted, right? I didn't know what I was doing. But they don't see that. All they see is, oh, wow, you got 40 million in real estate. You're 25 years old. You have a bucket that stores, you'll be on shelves pretty soon. Well, it looks great from the cover, but go dig inside of it. It was a shit journey, but it was fun. It had its ups, it had its downs, but there was a lot of downs, a lot of disappointment, a lot of thinking you're going to go somewhere with something and it fails, like that Minneapolis airport I kind of touched on, that ended up failing. There was all sorts of regulation stuff I couldn't get past, but I learned a lot in each and every one of them. But there is a lot of stuff behind the scenes that people don't see. All they see is what they want to hear, or the headline. All they see is the headline.
You want to touch on the $100,000 that you got from Jim for renovation? And it was
the first 100, right?
Yeah, the first 100,000. And he said, you're spending it foolishly or whatever it was. What did you see that you could have done differently?
Oh, everything. From, simple things that aren't that fun to talk about. Going to get prices for cabinets at this place versus this one. I went there, I saw the cabinets, I wrote them down, and I ordered them. You don't think to go get 3 or 4 different bids, right? Putting an ad up on Facebook looking for help in Albert Lee, 40 hours a week for someone. Well, the people that are reaching out to you looking for help in the middle of a summer in 2019 probably aren't going to be the most quality people. They're the reason why they're looking for a job themselves, right? So I would have done everything differently. And I hope to do another big rehab project like that again, and I'm going to do it completely differently. Hiring a good general, maybe, especially now when I got other irons in the fire, I'm not going to general it myself. I'll hire a good quality general who has good quality subs who do good quality work. Because right now, it's still a nice building, the renovations are complete, but I'm replacing floors that were installed improperly. Now they're gapping and waving. I'm replacing plumbing stuff that's leaking now, 4 years later, because I'm still eating the mistakes I've made. Had I done it differently the first time, would I have spent another $100,000 because of hiring a general and hiring better subs? Yeah, probably. But that would have far been worth it, far and away, for the stress that I went through, the sleepless nights, the begging Jim for money in his office in tears, all the stress it put on me for a month, for months.
How was that on your marriage?
And the quality. It wasn't so tough on the marriage because my wife was very supportive through it.
Did you bring your work home, bring your stress home?
I'm sure I did.
Okay.
Yeah, ask my wife, she might tell you all about it, but
yeah.
I don't remember it. It was kind of now, it's just a quick memory that I try not to remember it because it sucked so bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of lost my train of thought there, but the whole thing sucked. That whole renovation sucked. There was, when you finish a floor and get it filled up, there's cool spots, there's cool parts to it, right? Having a tenant come into their new apartment and they really like it with the modern finishes and stuff, and that's great. But even to this day, I'm still paying for mistakes that I made on that building.
And now you get to learn from them.
Yeah.
Put it to practice.
Oh yeah.
And go to the next one.
Yeah. Remember Jim had told me, if you can do this, you can do anything in commercial real estate. Taking over that 252 unit was nothing. That was a breeze. And you would think, wow, that's a completely different size building. It is, but it was turnkey. He did a great job managing it, and his managers transitioned it over to me. That building is a walk in the park.
So you got the management team too?
No, they transitioned out. I replaced them, but they stayed on with me for 30 days.
Okay.
And then I hired my own people. But yeah, he said, if you can do this, you can do anything, and he meant it. And I was like, yeah, that's great. But now I'm looking back on those words thinking, he was right. Because now every real estate transaction I've been a part of since has been a breeze. So in a way, I'm glad I did it, but boy, would I have done it completely differently.
Well, man, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.